Good afternoon. Thank you for letting me spend a few minutes with you. I'm sorry I can't be there with you today, but I am here in front of my MacBook Pro this morning in San Diego at the Conference for Research on Innovations in Early Intervention. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's a gathering of all of the top scholars and researchers on early childhood, and they meet every 2 years to talk about new innovations in research and trying to advance the thinking around how to best serve young children. Now, what does that have to do with everything we're talking about today? Well, I'm not an early childhood intervention person. I'm in a Department of Educational Leadership, and as you know, I focus on innovation and design thinking. And that process of design thinking is being brought to bear on the question of how to best serve young children. And so we're here presenting some research on that. What we've been doing is using many of the same techniques we've been talking about with you over the last couple of weeks, empathy, need finding, to understand the needs and feelings of people that aren't usually at the conversation table about how provision of childcare services should be done. So we're presenting a poster on the ways in which we've used empathy to look at the ways childcare providers feel about coaching technical assistants and their lives as childcare providers in such a way that we can design prototypes to make childcare technical assistance better and therefore actually childcare better. Now, what does that have to do with you? Well, it has a lot to do with this concept that I want to throw out there called radical collaboration. This isn't a term that I came up with, but it's something that I think is really important for us to think about. The Stanford D School describes radical collaboration as bringing together innovators with varied backgrounds and viewpoints, enabling breakthrough insights and solutions to emerge from this diversity. So let's think about that a moment, particularly this first phrase, bring together innovators. Do you think about your students as innovators? Because once you begin to frame them like that, then you can start to think of them as sources for new ideas to create new solutions to difficult challenges. Now, how far can we take this thinking of radical collaboration as students, as innovators? How far can we take this idea that the people around us who aren't necessarily the scholars, the educators, the professionally trained, how far can we take the idea that they might actually have something important to say about creating innovations in schools? We're thinking about it in pretty deep ways in one of the projects related to this early intervention work. We're working with young children, preschool children. And the question is, how might preschool children be co-creators, co-collaborators, co-designers of programs for young children? And we're working on talking to teachers to empathize with their students, their 4-year-olds, their 3-year-olds, even their infants and 6-month-old students. So we're asking questions like, what's their family situation like? What are their hobbies and interests? Yes, we ask about the hobbies and interests of infants. We want to know what their regular rituals are, the ways that they want to have things under control, things that might be habits they want to kick. What are contradictions in their little lives? Knowing all of these things about how a young child wants to feel, even at such an early age, gives us insights on ways in which we can help design new prototypes for early childhood. Now, if we can empathize with a 6-month-old or even a 4-year-old, what kinds of ways could you empathize with an elementary school student or a middle school student or a high school student and start to understand their needs about the way schools could look? It could be quite enlightening. It's this kind of enlightenment that you get from starting to walk in the shoes of another that has really driven us to a level of excitement about the ways in which a process like design thinking can support change in schools. And for some of you out there, you've discovered this. You know it works. And for those of you that have done that, you also know that it is hard work. It's different work. It's not just about convening students and asking them questions, but it's also about really getting to know them, spending more time with what they say, and then actually unpacking that with your colleagues to say, What do we see here together as a synthesis of what's going on here? And then what could we prototype because we now know these new things? So that's been the point of our little emails over the last 4 or 5 weeks, with some tips on steps you could take to go through this discovery process. And I know that it's difficult to fit this sort of work into the day-to-day doings of everything going on in your lives, particularly in schools. But if you can find the will and the team and the interest, and you just follow those steps, it's going to generate some new ideas and new interests that you wouldn't otherwise find from any other conversation. And so that's why we send out the tips. And if you haven't gotten to them, that's okay. If you decide to get to them, then you can certainly go back and follow those steps. And they're based on the handbooks that we've given you. And in time, we'd like to put out other steps about what to do once you've collected a bunch of data from students and others. Because this discovery process and the empathy that you do will yield a lot of information, and we can help you distill it down so that you can take the next steps that make the most sense for you. So I'm excited about you thinking about student agency. I'm excited about you putting students at the center of an innovation process. And if you think about the steps we've been giving you to use, you can put them in place to really lift that voice in a way that turns it into a change and not just an interesting conversation. So I hope you'll have a discussion now with my friends here in the room about what works for you and what doesn't, what part of the tips and steps that we've sent over the last 5 weeks helped you or could have been better, and then what you need in terms of support from us to go to the next steps in April so that you can make a change and feel good about going to the next level with your programs. I am online and ready to hear your questions. Send me an email at john.nash@uky.edu, and I'd be happy to talk with you and coach you through any of the steps where you think you'd like to get some help. Thanks again for letting me have a few minutes with you. I'm sorry I couldn't be there, but I hope to talk with you soon. Stay in touch. I'll see you online. Have a great day.